1 minute ago, Kanye West unmasks control network Diddy cornered in courtroom shock. I'm not here to talk about music. I'm here to talk about murder. The courtroom had heard whispers for weeks. Rumors circled like vultures. Something explosive was coming. But nothing could have prepared the room for the moment Kanye West entered, dressed in black. His expression unreadable. Sunglasses removed. He didn't walk like a celebrity. He walked like a man on a mission. Before a word left his mouth, the atmosphere shifted. The judge adjusted his robe. The jury leaned forward. Reporters readied their hands. This wasn't just testimony. This was a reckoning. "I need you to listen to me," Kanye began, voice steady but charged with tension. "This isn't about tabloids. This isn't about breakdowns. This is about who really holds the strings and what they did to Michael Jackson." Gasps echoed. Diddy, seated at the defense table, blinked but didn't flinch. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Kanye ignored it all. He wasn't here to perform. He was here to reveal. What Kanye unveiled was not a theory. It was an accusation, surgical, deliberate, devastating. He spoke of Fahhem Muhammad, a man whose name rarely touched headlines, yet whose shadow danced behind two of music's greatest icons, a security chief now employed by Diddy. Fahhem had once been tasked with protecting Michael Jackson in the months leading up to his death. But Kanye painted a different portrait, not protector, but handler, not bodyguard, but enforcer. Michael didn't hire him, Kanye said, eyes locking with the jury. Industry connections did, the same industry that profited when he died. He paused, letting the words hang heavy. Fahhem knew everything. Michael's schedule, his prescriptions, his fears. The courtroom stilled. No coughs, no whispers. Just the rhythm of revelation. Then came the moment that froze the gallery. Kanye claimed to have heard Michael Jackson's last voicemail, in a voice barely above a whisper. Kanye quoted it. "Tell them it's Puffy. He knows he's here." Diddy's face twitched. One of his lawyers stood abruptly, objecting. "Your Honor, this is hearsay," but the judge waved them down. "The witness will continue." Kanye nodded. Michael was afraid, not of shadows, of people with names, people who stood to gain if he vanished. The shockwave rippled again. A juror covered their mouth, another clutched the armrest like it was the only thing keeping them upright. Kanye didn't stop with Michael. He began drawing lines the public had long refused to connect. Prince warned about the contracts. He said, DMX spoke about the demons. Whitney said she knew too much. And Left Eye? She said she was being followed. All of them. Silenced. He listed them like fallen soldiers. Each one resisting. Each one erased. He wasn't just telling a story. He was naming casualties of a system. They paint you crazy, he added, so they don't have to explain why you're gone. A chilling silence followed. Then Kanye leaned forward and looked straight at Diddy. "You watched the king fall. You made sure he didn't rise again." Diddy's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. Not yet. Kanye's next move turned the courtroom into a live autopsy of celebrity power. He spoke of Wharton, of silent ties between elite schools and covert influence. He described Fahhem not as a man with a gun, but a man with a mission. "A bodyguard doesn't speak at Wharton," he said, "but a handler. A strategist. That makes sense." He claimed Fahhem helped erase digital records after Michael's death. Cameras down, footage wiped, just like the tunnels in Diddy's homes. The implication was chilling. Fahhem had cleaned up before. And he could do it again. The jury looked rattled. Diddy's composure cracked. For the first time, he looked cornered, but Kanye wasn't done. "Michael once told me, they want me gone. They want what I own." And he wasn't paranoid. He was right. He closed his folder and stood there, silent. Then he added, quietly, "The industry didn't just kill him. They turned his death into a product." Before the judge could call a recess, one juror stood, visibly shaken. The room watched as security stepped forward, just in case. The first crack in the wall had formed, but it was only the beginning. The courtroom did not return to normal after Kanye's opening salvo. It couldn't. Whatever veil had hung over the proceedings had been torn down, leaving only exposed nerves and a lingering sense of danger. Even as court recessed for the day, murmurs spread like wildfire. The press exploded outside. Legal commentators called it the most explosive testimony since the O.J. trial. But inside those walls, the real shift was quieter. It was the way Diddy clenched his jaw. The way Fahhem Muhammad, silent and unreadable, didn't meet anyone's gaze. And the way the judge called an emergency meeting with both legal teams. Eyebrows furrowed as though history had been rewritten beneath his bench. When court reconvened, Kanye returned not with fire, but with cold precision. He began outlining what he called the handler network, a system, he claimed, designed to manage, contain, and when necessary, eliminate high-risk artists. It's not just about control, he said. It's about containment, surveillance, pressure, and if that fails, silence. He played the jury a video, not of Michael, but of himself on a talk show, nervously twitching, speaking too fast. Then he paused the screen. "You called it a meltdown," he said, "but I was being warned, just like Michael, just like Prince." He told the jury about Harley Pasternak, his former trainer turned psychological enforcer. "He texted me, told me I'd be back in zombie land if I didn't obey." Kanye said, "Sound familiar?" Because Michael got his version of Harley too. Only his wore a suit, not gym gear. He looked directly at Fahhem Muhammad. The courtroom sat in a strange stillness. This was no longer about celebrity gossip. The jury, previously struggling to keep up with industry names and blurred timelines, now listened as if they were being handed pieces to a puzzle they didn't know existed. One juror whispered to another. Another scribbled furiously. The court sketch artist stopped drawing to stare. Then Kanye dropped the next piece. Why was Fahhem Muhammad, barely 20 years old, put in charge of Michael Jackson's safety? He had no elite security background, no military clearance. But somehow, he ends up at Michael's mansion, alone, days before the death of the most valuable artist on the planet. A pause. Then, a line that would trend globally within the hour. You don't get hired to protect someone like that unless your job isn't protection. With chilling calm, Kanye detailed the inconsistencies surrounding Michael Jackson's death. The surveillance cameras that malfunctioned the night he died, the sudden disappearance of his longtime security staff, the silence of Fahhem Muhammad during the Conrad Murray trial, the erased hard drives. The voicemail never played for the public. It wasn't a death. It was a transition, Kanye said, from man to myth, from artist to asset. He pointed to a document, a leaked AEG email. It read, "He doesn't need to be well. He just needs to make it through opening night." They didn't care if he lived, Kanye said. They cared if he could sell out the first show. A gasp. Even the court reporter paused her typing. Diddy's defense team tried to object, tried to reframe Kanye's testimony as delusional, but the room had changed. The gallery wasn't seeing a ranting celebrity anymore. They were seeing a man who'd connected dots no one else dared. The prosecution, once hesitant to rely on Kanye as a credible witness, suddenly requested an extended session. New subpoenas were being drafted. Fahhem Muhammad's phone records were now in demand. Even whispers of reopening parts of the Jackson investigation echoed through the hallways, and then came the moment that shifted the tide permanently. Kanye pulled out a printed screenshot of a text message allegedly sent from Fahhem to a now missing staff member the night Michael died. Don't worry, it's done. Keep your head down. The house is clean. Diddy snapped. He whispered furiously to his lawyer, his posture stiffening, the mask cracking. Reporters ran from the courtroom to get the quote online. The house is clean began trending within minutes. Meanwhile, the Jackson family released a joint statement. We withheld the truth out of fear, but fear no longer serves us. Former employees came forward. One testified anonymously that they saw unfamiliar men moving through Michael's home the night before he died. Another claimed they were paid to delete emails and messages. For the first time, Diddy's team wasn't in control. The courtroom, the media, even public opinion were moving in a direction they couldn't steer. And at the center of it all stood Kanye, no longer the one being silenced, but the one holding the mic. The courtroom's atmosphere was different now. What began as speculation and spectacle had twisted into something sharper, purposeful, historical. Journalists had stopped rolling their eyes. Lawyers on both sides whispered more than they spoke. Even the judge, who had initially treated Kanye's appearance as a volatile wild card, now leaned forward with quiet curiosity. Because what Kanye had done, beyond the dramatics, beyond the viral lines, was shift the burden of belief. He wasn't asking the court to believe in a conspiracy. He was forcing them to reckon with a pattern. Kanye returned to the stand with a binder, not of lyrics, of legal documents, press clippings, asset valuations. He laid them on the table, one after another: catalog values, ownership stakes, licensing rights. Then he spoke just 3 words. Follow the money? He began dissecting the empire that Michael Jackson had controlled and the one Diddy built in his wake. Michael owned half of Sony's publishing catalog. Half, Kanye said, that's not just power. That's threat-level power. He pointed to contracts, acquisitions, the rapid shift of catalog ownership after Michael's death, and guess who made major moves in music publishing? Just months later, he said, holding up a printed headline, Diddy's empire expands secures multi-million-dollar catalog deal. Kanye didn't just imply motive. He framed it in dollars. Michael's comeback tour was projected to rake in hundreds of millions. His catalog containing the Beatles, Elvis, and more was worth billions. He was more valuable dead than alive, Kanye said, voice flat. And that's not a theory? That's a business model. He gestured at the jury. Do you think billion-dollar shifts happen without orchestration, without consent? No. Someone made a decision, and someone executed it. The jury was motionless. One juror scribbled something, looked up, and underlined it. Kanye pressed forward. He referenced past testimonies from the Conrad Murray trial, voicemails, security logs, Jackson's growing paranoia, and the abrupt shift in his team just before his death. Michael told me, Kanye said, they were pushing him too far, that people around him weren't who they said they were. He didn't trust them. He said, I feel like someone inside is trying to end this. Then he paused and asked a question no one in the courtroom had prepared for. When was the last time you heard of a surveillance system failing the night a billion-dollar man dies? He recounted what former Jackson staff members had begun to say, messages sent too late, ignored concerns, figures in the hallways who didn't belong. He recited a chilling report from a housekeeper I heard music blaring all night. Not from the speakers, from inside his bedroom, like he was trying to drown something out. The implications settled over the gallery like fog. Kanye leaned closer to the microphone. What does a man like Michael Jackson have to be afraid of who can make him hide in his own house? Then he answered himself. Someone who wasn't just in the house, someone who had the keys. The final blow in part 3 didn't come from Kanye. It came from the outside. A journalist from Billboard stood during the break and shouted, "We've just confirmed Fahhem Muhammad was on the payroll of Combs Global 2 years before Jackson's death." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled. Phones buzzed in unison. Diddy's defense tried to object to the theatrics, but the judge didn't intervene. Not this time. The pyramid, as Kanye had described it, a hierarchy of stylists, assistants, lawyers, and handlers, was beginning to show its fractures. Its interlocking pieces were coming undone. And the man once considered an unreliable witness now stood at the center. Not as a fire starter, but as a surgeon, cutting through the fabric of silence. As the judge ordered recess, Kanye stood, watching the room stir in panic and revelation. He turned once more toward the gallery and said, "If Michael died of drugs, why did his cameras fail? Why did his staff vanish? Why was his catalog already in negotiation?" He didn't wait for an answer. He walked out in silence, leaving behind questions no one could unask, and a courtroom suddenly desperate for more. No one expected the courtroom to erupt that morning. Not the judge, not the bailiff, not even the defense team. But all it took was one name: Fahhem Muhammad. A name that had hovered like fog over the proceedings suddenly became the storm itself. And for the first time since the trial began, the defense didn't have a plan. Fahhem Muhammad had remained silent, his expression unreadable, as Kanye's testimony painted him as the ghost at the center of it all. The man who had Michael Jackson's schedule, his medicine cabinet codes, his trust, and possibly his fate. But now, Fahim's past was being unearthed in real time. Kanye had set it in motion, but it was the former staffers of Neverland and Carrollwood Drive who began to blow the door wide open. Anonymous sources, leaked documents, a voicemail authenticated by an industry whistleblower. And then, a woman stepped forward. She didn't walk in with fanfare. No cameras followed her. But when she sat down and adjusted the microphone, the temperature in the courtroom dropped. Her name was redacted in court records, identified only as Witness C, a former assistant who had worked with Michael Jackson during his final year. Her voice was soft, but each word was weighted like stone. Michael changed when Fahhem showed up. She said, "He stopped laughing. He stopped letting us in. His door was always locked." She described nights when Michael would request his security team to rotate, only to find Fahhem had canceled the change. He said Fahhem was too close, but no one listened. Then she said something that made the courtroom hold its breath. "I was there the night before Michael died. I saw a man come in through the back gate. I didn't recognize him, but Fahhem let him in. No questions." Gasps filled the gallery. Diddy's defense rose in objection, but the judge waved them off. The weight of the moment could not be interrupted. Michael's bedroom lights flickered. Then the music started. Loud. Really loud. He never played it that loud. She stopped, looked down, then continued. That night, he asked me to find a new phone for him. Said he didn't trust his line. He said, "They're listening through the walls." Kanye returned to the stand not to argue, but to connect. He began naming names. Not just Michael, but others. Artists who had warned of handlers, of invisible prisons, of being watched even in their own homes. Prince told us about the contracts. Kanye said. DMX said the demons had faces. Whitney told Clive Davis she knew too much. He pointed to a chilling pattern. Each one of them discredited, isolated, silenced, and always after they tried to take ownership of music, of truth. The jury sat in stunned silence. Then Kanye leaned into the microphone and told a story he had never shared publicly. He described a meeting with Michael just months before the singer's death. A quiet evening, no entourage, just two men speaking in hushed tones, Michael looked scared. Kanye said, not nervous, not anxious, scared. He told me he felt like his house wasn't his, that someone else had the keys. Then Kanye paused and added, he said he didn't hire Fahhem. He said someone else put him there. Another former employee came forward. This time, it was an AEG insider. He had worked logistics for Michael's This Is It tour, a mid-level coordinator, unknown to the public, invisible in the chain of command, but he had seen things. He testified about emails that were never supposed to reach the public, internal warnings about Michael's health, notes from executives saying, get him to opening night, then we'll reassess. They didn't care about him. They cared about what he was worth. Then he dropped the line that fractured the courtroom. Someone floated the idea of doubling insurance the week before he died. For the first time, the judge didn't just listen. He leaned forward, eyebrows raised, expression sharp. He turned to the defense and asked, was Fahhem Muhammad ever cross-examined during the 2009 investigation? The defense stuttered. No, Your Honor. He wasn't seen as a relevant figure at the time. The judge nodded slowly. Then perhaps he is now. The air thinned. Outside the courtroom, the ripple turned into a wave. Handler Network began trending globally. Activists called for an independent probe into high-profile celebrity deaths. News anchors began revisiting cold footage. Whistleblowers reached out to media outlets with cryptic messages. Michael wasn't the only one. And the Jackson family. They released a video, black and white. Simple, silent. Except for Jermaine Jackson's voice. We were afraid. We thought we were protecting him, even in death. But silence is no longer protection. It's complicity. As court adjourned for the day, Kanye stood at the back of the gallery, not as a performer, not as a headline, just as a man watching the world begin to ask the questions he had asked for years. Then he whispered to a reporter nearby, just loud enough to be quoted, "This isn't about me anymore. It never was. This is about who's next." By the fifth day of testimony, the trial had become something more than legal proceedings. It was theater, reckoning, an unraveling broadcast to millions, but felt most deeply by those in the room. And that morning, as the gallery filled and cameras flickered, the silence spoke louder than any statement. No one questioned if something had broken. They were just waiting to see how much further it would fall apart. It started with an unusual motion. The prosecution requested Fahhem Muhammad be called to the stand. Until then, he had sat silently behind the defense table, unflinching. The judge granted it. Fahhem walked slowly, confidently, but his shoulders tensed as he swore his oath. Kanye, seated quietly now, didn't look at him. He didn't have to. The attention had shifted. The storm had moved to the eye. "Mr. Muhammad," the prosecutor began, "do you recall the night of June 24, 2009? Fahhem nodded. "I do. You were Michael Jackson's head of security. I was one of his security personnel." "Yes." "Were you in the house the night before he died?" A pause. "I was on duty. I arrived late evening." The questioning intensified. Details about camera outages, deleted security footage, a second man seen entering, the text message. "It's done. The house is clean." Fahhem denied it all, claimed it was fiction, claimed Kanye had misremembered or was misled. But his voice wavered. Then came the cross-examination. The prosecutor read from a previously sealed deposition in an unrelated lawsuit, Lil Rod v. Combs Global. In it, Fahim's name appeared repeatedly, described as the cleaner, the fixer, the one who makes calls. "Is this you?" the prosecutor asked. "I was employed for logistics," Fahhem replied. "Were you present at the Diddy tunnel properties recently raided?" "I was not involved." "Do you deny erasing hard drives from Jackson's home?" I have no knowledge of that. But the jury wasn't just listening to answers. They were watching his hands, his posture, the tightening of his jaw, and it was cracking. The day didn't end with Fahhem. A second whistleblower, codenamed Echo, submitted encrypted emails sent between record label executives and Combs Global weeks before Michael's death. The contents weren't read aloud in full, but one line was leaked by a journalist outside the court. MJ's health is unsustainable. If anything happens, we need catalog access clarified. The term catalog access triggered a storm online. Music rights experts weighed in, lawyers debated, but the public saw only one thing motive. Kanye returned to the stand not to press more accusations, but to expand the timeline. He turned the conversation to Prince. Prince died alone in an elevator after warning people about contracts, about surveillance, about being watched. He described Prince's battle with Warner Brothers, how he changed his name, how he wore slave on his face, how he reclaimed his catalog and then was found dead weeks before a full music rights transfer. This isn't isolated, Kanye said. It's systemic. He paused, then added, Prince warned me. Before he died, he said, they don't want us free. They want us profitable or gone. Then came the bombshell no one saw coming. An internal document from a major award committee later confirmed as the Recording Academy was introduced into evidence. It discussed public image crises and referenced both Kanye and Michael by name. Controversy control protocols in place. Contain narrative. Protect affiliate partnerships. What does that mean to you? Mr. West, the prosecutor asked. Kanye didn't blink. It means the music industry has emergency procedures, not for saving artists, for burying them. As the testimony mounted, Diddy's veneer began to disintegrate. He fidgeted. He whispered constantly to his counsel. Once, he slammed his fist against the table when Kanye referenced Clive Davis. But the real crack came when Kanye said, Diddy's not just a man. He's a symbol of the system. That's why he's untouchable. Or was. The courtroom exploded in murmurs. The judge called for order, but the moment had landed. Diddy stood, and for the first time, he spoke. This is a circus, he shouted. You're letting him spin fiction in front of cameras like it's Netflix. He pointed at Kanye. He's unstable. He's bitter. He's building a story so he can sell another album. The judge struck his gavel once, twice. Mr. Wood Combs, sit down or be removed from the court. But Diddy didn't sit. He stared at Kanye. Cold, measured. You think this ends with me? He said. You don't know who you're playing with. Security moved forward. Diddy finally relented, but the damage was done. Outside. The Jackson family released a joint letter titled, We Stand with Truth. Inside. Court officials prepared to issue subpoenas to New Figures executives, lawyers, and producers whose names had surfaced in Kanye's testimony. The system had been pierced, not destroyed, not yet. But it was no longer safe. The final day of testimony didn't begin like the others. There were no murmurs, no whispered predictions, just a strange, eerie stillness. The kind that settles over space when everyone knows something irreversible is about to happen. Outside, hundreds gathered behind barriers, protesters and believers, skeptics and media fanatics, every one of them locked into the same question. Would this trial change anything? Inside, the answer was beginning to form. The prosecution opened with a visual. Projected onto the courtroom screen was a timeline, a grim ledger of artists who died under mysterious or controversial circumstances. Michael Jackson, Prince, Whitney Houston, DMX, Lisa Left Eye Lopes, Amy Winehouse, Biggie Smalls. Then a line connected them. Not in red string or tabloid fiction, but through contracts, ownership battles, industry ties, mental health narratives weaponized, meltdowns framed conveniently in time with legal disputes. This isn't a conspiracy, the prosecutor said. This is a pattern, and at the center of it is control of catalogs, of legacies, of power. The prosecution then did something unexpected. They turned away from Kanye, away from Diddy, and addressed the gallery. This isn't about one mogul. This isn't about one death. It's about how much silence we're willing to accept. They presented emails from entertainment lawyers describing strategies to restructure IP control post-mortem and messages between executives referring to Michael Jackson's death as a strategic reset. The audience didn't gasp this time. They simply stared, eyes wide. Truth no longer needed drama. It just needed light. Then came the testimony the world had waited for. Paris and Prince Jackson appeared by video. Their voices trembled, but their words were clear. My father feared the industry, Paris said. He said he felt watched, trapped. I didn't understand it then, Prince added. We found recordings, messages, warnings he left for us in case anything happened. They didn't accuse, they didn't point fingers, but what they did do was confirm what Kanye had claimed all along. He knew something was wrong, and no one believed him. Kanye didn't return to the stand. He didn't need to. Instead, his closing words came through a written statement delivered to the court. This trial was never about revenge. It was about remembering, not just who Michael was, but what they did to him. If I go down for saying this, fine. But someone had to say it. He ended with a quote Michael allegedly told him. They'll smile at you while they dig your grave. Don't let them lower the shovel. The trial didn't end with a dramatic gavel. It ended with a motion from the prosecution, reopened the investigation into Michael Jackson's death, not based solely on opinion, but on new evidence, new witnesses, and newly unearthed records. The judge didn't oppose. Outside, reporters shouted headlines into cameras. Federal probe reopened. Fahhem Muhammad subpoenaed. Combs Network under review. And on social media. One line surged above all Kanye wasn't crazy. He was first. In the days that followed, the ripple turned into a quake. Several major executives stepped down from their positions. Labels announced catalog audits. Streaming services temporarily removed certain albums pending review. Artists who had once stayed silent began to speak. Halsey, The Weeknd, Tinashe. Each one echoed a new fear that had become old reality. We are not in control of our own art. 3 weeks later, Kanye released a documentary, but it wasn't about him. It was titled The King and the Chains: What Killed Michael Jackson. It didn't feature new music. No stylized edits, just testimony, files, footage. The documentary ended with a single black screen and one sentence. In memory of those who warned us and were punished for it. Michael Jackson's estate filed a civil claim to retake ownership of all IP diverted after his death. The Jackson family established a fund for artists struggling against corporate coercion. Public hearings were proposed in Congress to investigate celebrity conservatorships, posthumous rights transfers, and the abuse of psychiatric holds. Diddy, he issued a brief statement. This trial was a performance, not a process. The truth will come out, and I'll be here when it does. But the silence that followed him spoke louder. Endorsements vanished. A documentary project about his career was shelved. Former collaborators deleted posts, and the tunnel footage once denied was quietly confirmed to exist. This wasn't just about Michael anymore. It was about every artist who ever whispered, "I don't feel safe." It was about every contract signed in desperation, every camera disabled, every vault of footage never aired, every meltdown that was maybe just a cry for help. And for once, Someone had refused to play along. As Kanye stepped into the daylight outside the courthouse, a reporter asked him, "Do you think you won?" He paused, smiled only slightly. This was never about winning. It was about waking up. Then he disappeared into the crowd, and the system, still trembling, was forced to see itself in the mirror